Hello, friend. Welcome to Science for Sleep. Whether you are returning tonight or discovering this quiet corner for the first time, this is a gentle place to slow down, learn something soft and real, and let the day slowly fall away. Tonight, we are going to look closely at something so common that it is easy to stop seeing it. A leaf, not a rare flower, not a giant redwood trunk, not a bright fruit hanging from a branch. Just a leaf, resting on a stem, moving slightly in the air. You may picture one in your hand. Thin, green, and light enough to be lifted by the smallest breeze. Its surface may feel smooth, waxy, soft, dusty, or slightly rough. Its edge may be round like a magnolia leaf, sharp like a holly leaf, or divided into small points like the leaf of a sugar maple. And running through it are veins, branching again and again, like tiny roads carrying water, minerals, and sugar through the plant. A leaf can look simple, but it is one of the most important living surfaces on Earth. Inside that green surface, sunlight is being caught and changed into food. Air is being taken in. Water is moving upward from roots, through stems, and out into the sky as invisible vapor. And all of this can happen inside something thinner than a piece of paper. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, you're welcome to subscribe. And if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight. It helps others find their way to this calm corner of the world, one sleepy traveler at a time. A leaf is not only a flat piece of a plant, it is a living workshop. Most green leaves are filled with a pigment called chlorophyll, which gives them their color. Chlorophyll helps capture energy from sunlight. The plant then uses that energy to combine carbon dioxide from the air with water from the soil. From those simple ingredients, the leaf makes sugars. Those sugars feed the plant, helping it grow new roots, bark, flowers, fruits, seeds, and more leaves. This process is called photosynthesis. The word sounds large, but the idea is gentle. Photo means light. Synthesis means putting things together. A leaf uses light to put new food together. And while it does this, it releases oxygen. The oxygen drifting around you right now has passed through this kind of green work again and again, across forests, grasses, algae, mosses, crops, and houseplants. Even a small leaf on a windowsill is part of that older pattern. To take in carbon dioxide, a leaf needs openings. But it cannot simply stay open all the time. Water would escape too quickly, so leaves use tiny pores called stomata. A single pore is called a stoma. These are microscopic openings, often found mostly on the underside of a leaf. They can open and close like little gates. When they open, carbon dioxide can move in. Oxygen and water vapor can move out. On many plants, there can be thousands of stomata on an area of leaf no bigger than your fingernail. They are too small to see without a microscope, yet they help control the breathing of the plant. And this is where the leaf becomes even stranger, because a leaf is always making a quiet trade. To make food, it needs air. To take in air, it must open its stomata. But when it opens them, it loses water. On a warm day, a large tree can move a surprising amount of water through its leaves. Some mature trees can release hundreds of liters of water vapor into the air in a single day, depending on the species, the weather, and the soil. This water movement is called transpiration. It helps pull water upward from the roots. It also helps cool the leaf, a little like sweat cooling skin, though plants do not sweat the way animals do. So a leaf is not still. Even when it looks still, it is busy. Light is landing. Water is rising. Gas is passing in and out through tiny pores. Sugars are forming. Veins are carrying. Cells are adjusting. And in some plants, when an insect begins chewing, the leaf can even sense damage and begin changing its chemistry. Not with thoughts, not with nerves, but through signals, chemicals, and responses built into the plant over millions of years. So this small green surface is already more than it seemed. It is a solar panel, a breathing gate, a cooling system, a food maker, and a warning system, all folded into one soft living shape. And the deeper we look at it, the more one simple question begins to grow. How did Earth ever become a planet covered in leaves? That small green surface becomes even more remarkable when the light touches it. Not bright light in a dramatic way, just ordinary daylight. The kind that falls across a garden fence, settles on a maple tree, or reaches through a kitchen window onto a houseplant. To us, sunlight feels like warmth and brightness. To a leaf, it is usable energy. A leaf does something that no animal body can do on its own. It takes light from the sky and uses it to build food from air and water. This process is photosynthesis. And although the word can sound complex, the basic idea is calm and clear. A leaf takes in carbon dioxide from the air. It pulls water up from the soil through the roots and stem. Then, inside tiny green structures in its cells, it uses sunlight to rearrange those ingredients into sugar. Those tiny green structures are called chloroplasts. They are so small that thousands can fit inside the soft tissue of a single leaf. Inside them is chlorophyll, the green pigment that captures light. Chlorophyll absorbs mostly red and blue light. It reflects more green light back to our eyes, which is why so many leaves look green. So the color of a leaf is not random. It is a sign of the way the leaf handles sunlight. The sugar made inside a leaf is often called glucose. Glucose is a simple sugar, but for a plant, it is the beginning of almost everything. Some of it is used right away for energy. Some is changed into starch and stored for later. Some is used to build cellulose, the tough material that helps make plant cell walls. Cellulose is what gives leaves, stems, wood, cotton, and paper much of their structure. So when a leaf makes sugar, it is not only making sweetness, it is making the raw material for the plant's body. A quiet stream of sunlight becomes roots reaching through soil. It becomes bark thickening around a trunk. It becomes a new bud at the end of a twig. It becomes a peach, an acorn, a grain of rice, a blade of grass, or another leaf opening slowly in spring. And as this green work happens, something else is released. Oxygen. The oxygen is not the main goal for the plant. It is a leftover from splitting water molecules during photosynthesis. Water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. The plant uses parts of that water in its sugar making, and the oxygen moves out through the stomata into the air. That leftover oxygen is one of the reasons animals can live the way they do. a sleeping cat, a grazing deer, a bird tucked into a cedar tree, and a person resting quietly at night all depend on oxygen moving into the lungs and then into the blood. Every breath connects back to green life. Not always to one leaf, of course. The air around Earth is mixed by winds, storms, oceans, and time. But over long stretches of history, photosynthetic life filled the atmosphere with the oxygen that complex animals now use. Leaves are part of that great exchange. Carbon dioxide goes in, oxygen comes out, water rises, sugar forms, light becomes life. It can help to picture a leaf as something like a solar panel. Both gather light, both turn sunlight into a useful form of energy. But a leaf is softer, stranger, and far more alive. A solar panel does not grow a new edge after being nibbled. It does not open tiny pores when the morning is damp and close them when the afternoon is dry. It does not send sugar down into roots or help build flowers for bees. A leaf can repair small injuries. It can change its angle toward light. It can grow from a folded bud into a wide surface. It can feed the living body that made it. And when its season is over, it can fall, break down, and feed the soil below. A leaf is not a machine sitting apart from nature. It is nature doing its quiet work with almost impossible skill. In forests, grasslands, wetlands, gardens, farms, and window boxes, leaves keep turning light into matter. They make the food that feeds the plant. Then plants feed insects, birds, mammals, fungi, and people. The work begins so quietly that it is easy to miss. A patch of sunlight lands on a green surface. Inside, molecules shift. Invisible gases move. Water climbs upward through narrow tubes, and the living world receives another small gift from the light. Yet Earth was not always filled with these green surfaces. For a very long time, there were no oak leaves, no fern fronds, no pine needles, no grass blades, and no forest canopies moving in the wind. The planet had sunlight, water, stone, and air, but the leaf had not yet arrived. For most of Earth's history, there were no leaves at all. No maple leaves turning red in October. No palm fronds moving above warm beaches. No fern leaves uncurling in a shaded forest. No grass blades wet with morning dew. For billions of years, sunlight reached the planet, but there were no forests waiting to catch it. The work of turning light into life began somewhere else. It began in water. Long before plants grew on land, tiny living cells drifted in ancient seas, lakes, and shallow coastlines. Some of these cells learned to use sunlight as energy. They were not plants in the way we picture plants now. They had no roots, no bark, no flowers, and no leaves. Many were single-celled organisms, so small that they could only be seen with a microscope, if a microscope had existed then. Among the most important were cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria are tiny photosynthetic bacteria. Their name means blue-green bacteria, and some still live today in ponds, oceans, wet soil, and even on damp rocks. They can form thin films, floating blooms, or layered mats. In places like Shark Bay in Western Australia, cyanobacteria help build stromatolites, which are rounded, layered rock-like structures formed as sticky microbial mats trap sediment over time. Some fossil stromatolites are more than 3 billion years old. They are quiet traces of a time when life was still mostly simple, small, and close to water. These early photosynthetic organisms use sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, much like leaves do now. But instead of green canopies, there were shallow waters filled with living films and tiny cells. And as they photosynthesized, they released oxygen. At first, that oxygen did not simply fill the sky. Much of it reacted with iron dissolved in the oceans. This helped create huge layers of iron-rich rock known as banded iron formations. These rocks often show red, grey, and dark stripes, like pages in a stone book. They preserve a memory of oxygen meeting iron in ancient seawater. Only after vast amounts of iron and other materials had reacted did oxygen begin building up in the atmosphere. This major shift is called the Great Oxidation Event. It began around 2.4 billion years ago. That is almost impossible to picture. But it was long before animals, long before trees, long before the first true leaf. The air slowly changed because tiny organisms kept doing the same quiet work with light. For some forms of life, oxygen was harmful. For others, it opened the way to a more powerful kind of energy use. Much later, complex cells appeared. Later still, algae became more diverse in the water. Green algae are especially important in the story of leaves, because land plants are closely related to ancient green algae. If you have ever seen green threads in a pond or a soft green film on wet stone, you have seen a distant reminder of the watery world plants came from. For a long time, water made life easier. It held organisms up. It kept them from drying out. It carried dissolved minerals. It softened the force of sunlight. But land was different. Land had open air, dry surfaces, bright, unfiltered light, and gravity pulling every soft body downward. To live there, plants needed new solutions. The first land plants likely appeared more than 470 million years ago, during the Ordovician period. They were probably small and simple, closer in form to mosses and liverworts than to trees or flowering plants. They did not have broad leaves like an oak or a banana plant. They did not have deep roots like a modern tree. Many would have grown low to the ground in damp places, spreading in thin green patches where water was nearby. A moss today can help us picture this early stage. Mosses are not the same as the first land plants, but they show what life can look like without tall trunks or large leaves. They stay low. They absorb water across their surfaces. They release spores instead of making seeds. A spore is a tiny reproductive cell that can grow into a new plant when conditions are right. Later, small branching plants appeared, such as Cooksonia, known from fossils around 425 million years old. Cooksonia had simple stems with spore-producing tips, but it still had no true leaves. It looked more like a tiny forked green plant than anything like a forest tree. Life had reached the land. It had found the light above the water. But it was still close to the ground, still simple, still tied to dampness. The planet had photosynthesis. It had oxygen. It had small green bodies beginning to spread across wet stone and muddy edges. But it had not yet solved the deeper challenge of standing openly in the dry air, lifting itself upward and holding broad green surfaces toward the sky. The first green life on land did not arrive like a forest. It arrived low, small, and close to wet ground. Picture a damp shoreline more than 400 million years ago. There are no birds in the trees. There are no flowers. There is no grass. There are only bare rocks, muddy edges, shallow pools, and small green growth spreading where water still lingers. For a plant, land offered something wonderful. Light was easier to reach in the open air. Carbon dioxide was available above the water. There was space to spread without waves constantly pulling the body apart. But land also brought dangers that water had always softened. Air dries living tissue quickly. Sunlight is stronger without water above it. Gravity pulls soft bodies downward, and water no longer surrounds every cell. A plant living on land had to find water, hold water, and move water, all while keeping its green surface open enough to take in air. That was not easy. Early land plants were probably simple and short because staying low helped them survive. If they grew close to damp soil, they could absorb moisture more easily. If they stayed small, they did not need to lift water very far. Many likely lived in wet places, near streams, pond edges, floodplains, and muddy ground that dried only for short periods. Modern mosses and liverworts give a soft picture of this kind of life. A liverwort is a small plant that often grows as a flat green body, pressed close to soil, bark, or wet stone. Some look like tiny green ribbons. Others form round, leafy patches. They do not have deep roots like a maple tree. Instead, they use small hair-like structures called rhizoids to hold themselves in place. Rhizoids are not true roots. They anchor the plant, but they do not move water through a tall body the way tree roots do. This kind of small plant body made sense in the early days of land life. A thin green patch could soak up water directly across its surface. It could spread over damp ground without needing a trunk. It could release spores into the air when conditions were right. But even these simple plants needed protection. A wet cell exposed to dry air can lose water fast. So one of the great early solutions was a waxy outer coating called a cuticle. A cuticle is a thin protective layer on the outside of a plant. It helps slow water loss, a little like a raincoat protecting the surface beneath it. Modern leaves still have cuticles. On some plants, like holly, magnolia, or rubber plant leaves, the cuticle can make the surface look shiny and smooth. In dry places, a thick cuticle can help a plant survive hot sun and moving air. But this protection created a new problem. If a plant seals itself too well, it cannot easily take in carbon dioxide. And without carbon dioxide, it cannot photosynthesize. So the plant needed a way to be protected and open at the same time. That balance shaped the future of leaves. The cuticle helped hold water in. Tiny pores helped let gases move in and out. The plant body became a careful boundary between the wet inner world of life and the dry outer world of air. Early land plants were living on that boundary every moment. Too open, and they dried. Too sealed, and they could not feed. Too tall, and water could not reach the upper parts. Too flat, and they were trapped near the ground. So for a long time, plant life remained modest. Small stems, simple surfaces. Green patches in damp places. No towering trunks yet. No wide shade yet. No deep forests with layered canopies. But the pressure was already there. Sunlight was above. Moisture was below. And any plant that could connect those two worlds more effectively would gain a quiet advantage. To rise higher, plants needed more than a coating and a flat green body. They needed inner passageways. They needed a way to draw water upward from the soil and carry newly made sugar back down into the living tissues below. Those inner passageways changed everything. Once a plant could move water through its body, it was no longer trapped as a thin green patch near damp ground. It could begin to rise. Not suddenly, not all at once, but slowly. Across millions of years, plants became better at connecting the wet soil below with the bright air above. This internal transport system is called vascular tissue. Vascular simply means that the plant has tubes or tube-like cells that carry fluids. In animals, blood vessels move blood. In plants, vascular tissues move water, minerals, and sugars. The two most important parts are xylem and phloem. Xylem carries water and dissolved minerals upward. It begins in the roots, where water enters from the soil. Then it moves through the stem and into the leaves. Phloem carries sugar-rich sap away from the leaves. That sugar was made through photosynthesis, and it has to reach the rest of the plant. Roots need sugar. Growing buds need sugar. Flowers, fruits, seeds, and bark all need sugar. So xylem is often pictured as the upward path. Phloem is often pictured as the feeding path, moving sugars from where they are made to where they are needed. This was a huge step in plant history. Some of the earliest known vascular plants lived more than 400 million years ago. A famous fossil plant called Cooksonia had small branching stems and no true leaves, but it had simple water-conducting tissue inside. It was only a few centimeters tall. Still, compared with a flat plant pressed against wet soil, even a small upright stem was a quiet breakthrough. Later, during the Devonian period, from about 419 to 359 million years ago, plants became larger and more complex. Fossils from the Rhynie Chert in Scotland, about 407 million years old, preserve early land plants in remarkable detail. The Rhynie Chert formed when mineral-rich hot spring water covered plants, fungi, and small animals, preserving them almost like a stone photograph. Inside some of those fossil plants, scientists can see early vascular tissues. Tiny ancient stems still show the structures that once moved water through living bodies. Xylem did more than move water. It also helped support the plant. Many xylem cells have walls strengthened with a tough material called lignin. Lignin is one of the substances that makes wood hard. It stiffens cell walls, helping stems stand upright instead of collapsing. This meant that the same system carrying water upward could also help lift plants higher into the air. A taller plant could reach brighter light. It could release spores from a higher point, allowing them to travel farther on the wind. It could rise above shorter neighbors and cast shade below. Even a small increase in height mattered. A plant only 10 centimeters tall could reach light that a 2-centimeter plant could not. Over time, that difference became important. With better plumbing, plants could also support larger green surfaces. A broader surface could catch more sunlight. More sunlight could mean more sugar. More sugar could build more tissue. And more tissue could help the plant grow still larger. This was not a simple straight path. Many early plants remained small. Many lived in wet places. But the direction had changed. Plants now had a way to lift water from below and move food from above. The body of a plant became more connected. Roots, stems, and leaves could begin to work together as parts of one living system. Even in a modern tree, the same basic pattern remains. Water enters through roots. It moves up through xylem in the trunk. It reaches the leaves, where sunlight helps make sugar. Then, phloem carries that sugar to growing tips, roots, flowers, fruits, and storage tissues. A sugar maple, an apple tree, a sunflower, a fern, and a blade of grass all depend on this quiet movement. The plant may look still from the outside, but inside, water is rising through narrow pathways, sometimes many meters above the ground. Sugar is moving away from the leaves, feeding parts of the body that never see the light. This was the hidden system that allowed plants to become vertical. Once green life could rise, the open air became a place of competition. Every taller stem could shade another. Every wider surface could catch more light. And every new bit of height made sunlight feel more valuable than before. Once plants could stand taller, the air above the ground became crowded in a new way. Sunlight was no longer something every green surface received equally. A plant that rose just a little higher could place its tissues above its neighbors. A plant that spread wider could catch more light before it reached the ground. Slowly, across ancient wetlands and river edges, height became a kind of quiet advantage. During the Devonian period, more than 360 million years ago, some plants began to form the first real forests. One of the most important was Archaeopteris. It was not a flowering tree like an oak or a maple. It was an ancient tree-like plant with woody tissue, deep roots, and leafy branches. Some Archaeopteris trees may have grown more than 10 meters tall, and in some places much taller. For the first time, large plants were not only living on the land, they were changing the land around them. Their roots broke into rock and helped create deeper soils. Their trunks lifted green branches into the air. Their shade changed which smaller plants could survive below. A forest is not just a collection of trees. It is a structure made of light. At the top, leaves receive the brightest sun. Below them, branches block and filter that light. Near the ground, only a softer, dimmer glow remains. In a modern temperate forest, such as a maple and beech forest in eastern North America, only a small fraction of full sunlight may reach the forest floor during summer. That is why spring wildflowers often bloom before the trees fully leaf out. Plants like trillium, bloodroot, and trout lily use the bright early weeks of spring, when bare branches still let sunlight through. Then, as the canopy closes, the forest floor becomes shaded and cool. The same pattern appears in a different way in tropical rainforests. In places like the Amazon basin or the forests of Borneo, tall canopy trees can rise 30 to 50 meters high. Some emergent trees push even higher, standing above the main canopy like green towers. Below them are smaller trees, palms, vines, shrubs, ferns, seedlings, and mosses, each living in a different layer of light. Leaves in those layers do not all behave the same way. A sun leaf near the top of a tree is often smaller, thicker, and built to handle strong light. A shade leaf lower down is often broader and thinner, made to catch weaker light more efficiently. Even on one tree, leaves can show different designs depending on where they grow. The plant is not simply making leaves. It is placing surfaces where light can be used. Many plants arrange their leaves carefully around a stem. This pattern is called phyllotaxis, which simply means leaf arrangement. Some leaves grow in pairs opposite each other. Some alternate one by one up the stem. Some follow spirals, so each new leaf avoids sitting directly above the one below it. A sunflower shows this kind of spiral pattern clearly in its seed head, and many plants use similar spacing in leaves, buds, or flowers. The reason is simple and beautiful. If leaves overlap too much, they shade each other. If they spread at useful angles, more light reaches more green surface. In forests, vines found another way to join the race. Instead of building thick trunks, vines use other plants for support. A grapevine, ivy, or tropical liana can climb toward light while spending less energy on wood. Epiphytes use a different method. These are plants that grow on other plants without taking food from them. Orchids, bromeliads, and some ferns can live high on branches, where light and rain are easier to reach than on the dark ground below. All of this shows how powerful sunlight became once plants could rise. Leaves widened, branches spread, stems stretched, canopies formed. Forests became layered worlds, with each layer shaped by how much light passed through the leaves above it. But this success carried a cost. A broad leaf is excellent for catching sunlight. It is also a wide surface exposed to air. The more surface a plant opens to the sky, the more water it can lose. So every gain in light created a new risk in dryness. The same flat shape that helped a leaf feed the plant also made it vulnerable to the air around it. The flat shape of a leaf is both its gift and its risk. A wide green surface can catch more sunlight. It can spread itself toward the sky like a soft living panel. But the same surface also touches the air on every side. And air is always ready to pull water away. This is why leaves cannot simply stay open to the world without control. They need carbon dioxide from the air to make sugar. But they also need to keep enough water inside their tissues to stay alive. The small openings that manage this balance are called stomata. A single opening is called a stoma. They are tiny pores in the surface of the leaf, usually too small to see with the naked eye. On many broad leaves, most stomata sit on the underside, where they are a little more protected from direct sun and moving air. If you could look at the underside of a bean leaf or a sunflower leaf under a microscope, you would see them scattered across the surface like tiny oval mouths. Each stoma is controlled by two guard cells. Guard cells are curved cells that can swell or shrink. When they fill with water, they bend outward and open the pore between them. When they lose water, they relax and the pore closes. It is a simple movement, but it controls one of the most important exchanges in the living world. When stomata open, carbon dioxide enters the leaf. Carbon dioxide is a gas in the air, and it makes up only a small part of the atmosphere, about 0.04%. That tiny amount still matters deeply. Inside the leaf, carbon dioxide is used during photosynthesis to help build sugars. Without it, the leaf could sit in full sunlight and still be unable to make food. So the leaf must open itself. It must let the air in. But the moment it does, water vapor can escape. This water loss is called transpiration. Transpiration is the movement of water from inside the plant into the air, mostly through the stomata. Water enters the roots from the soil. It travels upward through xylem, the plant's water-carrying tissue. It reaches the leaf, spreads into the moist spaces between leaf cells, and then leaves as vapor through the open stomata. A single stoma is tiny, but a whole tree may have millions of them. Together, they can release a great amount of water. A large oak, maple, or poplar on a warm summer day can move many liters of water from the soil into the air. In very large trees under good conditions, the amount can reach hundreds of liters in a day. The exact number depends on heat, wind, humidity, soil moisture, and leaf area. On a humid day, water leaves more slowly. On a dry, windy day, it escapes faster. The leaf has to sense these conditions and respond. If the air becomes too dry, many plants close their stomata to save water. That helps protect the plant from wilting. But it also slows photosynthesis because less carbon dioxide can get in. The leaf is always caught between hunger and thirst. Open the pores and the plant can feed. Close the pores and the plant can conserve water. Neither choice is perfect. Both are part of staying alive. Some plants have special ways to manage this trade. Desert plants, such as many cacti, open their stomata mostly at night, when the air is cooler and water loss is lower. They store carbon dioxide in chemical form, then use it during the day when sunlight is available. Many grasses, including corn and sugarcane, use a different method called C4 photosynthesis. This helps them gather carbon dioxide more efficiently in hot, bright places. That is one reason corn can grow so well in open summer fields. Other plants use thick, waxy cuticles, sunken stomata, small leaves, curled leaves, or hairs on the leaf surface to slow water loss. A pine needle, a cactus spine, a corn blade, and a banana leaf are all shaped by the same old bargain. Each one has to catch light. Each one has to take in air. Each one has to hold on to enough water. So the leaf is not only a food maker, it is a careful border between the plant and the atmosphere. On one side is the wet inner world of cells. On the other side is dry moving air. Between them are thousands of tiny gates, opening and closing through the day. That hidden breathing helps explain why leaves across Earth do not all share one shape. Different places ask different things from a leaf. Cold forests, hot deserts, wet jungles, windy cliffs, shaded floors, and open grasslands all shape the green surfaces that live there. Different places ask different things from a leaf. That is why the green world is not made from one design. A pine needle, a banana leaf, a cactus spine, and a maple leaf are all versions of the same basic idea. They are plant surfaces shaped by light, water, air, temperature, and time. A pine needle may not look much like a leaf, but it is one. It is simply a leaf narrowed into a tough, thin form. In cold forests across Canada, Scandinavia, Siberia, and the Rocky Mountains, conifers such as pine, spruce, fir, and hemlock keep many of their needles through winter. This is useful because making new leaves every spring takes energy. But winter creates a strange problem. The ground may be frozen, so roots cannot easily pull up liquid water. At the same time, dry winter air can still draw water out of exposed tissues. A broad, thin leaf would lose water too quickly. A needle helps solve this. It has a small surface area. It often has a thick, waxy coating. Its stomata may sit slightly sunken into the surface, where moving air reaches them less easily. Many needles also contain resin, the sticky, fragrant material that helps protect conifers from insects, fungi, and freezing damage. So a pine needle is not simple because it is primitive. It is simple looking because it is specialized. It is built to endure cold, wind, and dryness, while still catching light whenever conditions allow. Far away from those northern forests, tropical leaves solve a very different problem. In rainforests like the Amazon, the Congo Basin, and the forests of Southeast Asia, water is not usually scarce. The challenge is shade, heat, competition, and heavy rain. Under a rainforest canopy, light can be dim and broken into moving patches. A plant growing near the forest floor may receive only a small portion of the sunlight that reaches the treetops. Large leaves help gather that scattered light. This is why many understory plants have broad, wide leaves. The leaves of a banana plant can grow more than 2 meters long. The leaves of some elephant ear plants, such as colocasia, can be larger than a person's torso. These wide surfaces act like soft green nets, catching light that filters through gaps above. But large leaves in wet forests face their own danger. Rain can collect on them. Too much standing water can block gas exchange, encourage fungal growth, or weigh the leaf down. Many tropical leaves have pointed tips called drip tips. A drip tip helps water run off quickly, gathering at the point and falling away as drops. You can picture a glossy rainforest leaf after rain, tilted slightly downward, with water sliding along its surface and dripping from the end. Its shape is not only beautiful, it is drainage. It is protection. It is a way of living in a place where the sky may pour water for hours. In deserts, the challenge changes again. There, sunlight can be intense, but water may be rare for weeks, months, or even years. A broad leaf would be risky under that kind of dry heat. So many desert plants shrink their leaves, thicken them, cover them in wax, or give them up almost completely. A cactus spine is actually a modified leaf. It no longer makes much food through photosynthesis. Instead, it protects the plant from animals, casts tiny bits of shade, and reduces water loss. In many cacti, the green stem takes over the work of photosynthesis. The stem becomes thick and fleshy, storing water after rare rains. The saguaro cactus of the Sonoran Desert can grow over 12 meters tall, and store large amounts of water inside its pleated trunk. Its spines stand where broad leaves would have been far too costly. Other dryland plants use different leaf designs. Aloe leaves are thick and water-filled. Olive leaves are narrow, tough, and silvery underneath. Sagebrush leaves are small and often covered in fine hairs that help slow water loss. The leaf becomes a record of the place around it. Cold creates needles. Shade creates broad green surfaces. Heavy rain creates drip tips. Dryness creates wax, thickness, hairs, spines, and storage stems. Even the color can matter. Silvery or pale leaves can reflect more light and reduce heat. Dark green shade leaves can hold more chlorophyll to catch weaker light. A leaf is shaped by the conditions it has survived. So when we look closely at leaf form, we are not just seeing decoration. We are seeing weather, soil, season, hunger, thirst, and sunlight gimnin written into living tissue. And if living leaves can reveal the pressures of the places they grow now, then ancient leaves pressed into stone can carry traces of vanished forests, lost climates, and worlds that no human ever walked through. Ancient leaves pressed into stone can feel almost impossibly delicate. A thin outline, a branching vein, a rounded edge, a dark stain where soft green tissue once held sunlight. Some fossil leaves look as if they fell only yesterday, even though they may be tens of millions of years old. In places like the Florissant fossil beds in Colorado, leaves from ancient redwoods, elms, maples, and other plants were preserved in fine lake sediments around 34 million years ago. Fine mud settled over them gently. The leaf flattened. The soft tissue decayed. But its shape stayed behind, like a quiet print in stone. And that shape can tell a story. One of the most useful clues is the edge of the leaf. Some leaves have smooth edges, like magnolia or avocado leaves. Others have toothed edges, like birch, elm, or many maple leaves. A toothed edge has small points along the margin, almost like a tiny saw. In modern forests, scientists have noticed a broad pattern. Warm climates tend to have more tree species with smooth-edged leaves. Cooler climates often have more species with toothed leaves. This pattern is not perfect for every plant. There are exceptions, but across whole forests, it is strong enough to be useful. So when scientists find many fossil leaves in one layer of rock, they can study the percentage of smooth-edged and toothed leaves. If most of the fossil leaves have smooth margins, the ancient climate was likely warmer. If many have toothed margins, it may have been cooler. This method does not work from a single leaf. One leaf alone is too little, but a collection of fossil leaves from one ancient forest can become a kind of climate sample. The leaf shapes act like small clues left behind by rainfall, temperature, and season. There are other clues too. Large leaves are often common in warm, wet places, where water is available and broad surfaces can gather light. Small, tough leaves are more common in dry or cold places, where losing water is dangerous. A fossil leaf with a thick texture, narrow shape, or waxy-looking surface may suggest a plant adapted to stress. A wide, thin fossil leaf may suggest shade, warmth, or moisture. The stone does not speak directly, but the leaf gives enough detail to listen. Even the tiny breathing pores of leaves can leave clues. Those pores are called stomata. In a living leaf, stomata let carbon dioxide enter and water vapor escape. In a fossil leaf, especially one preserved with fine surface detail, scientists can sometimes count how many stomata appear in a small area. This matters because leaves often adjust their stomata depending on carbon dioxide levels in the air. When carbon dioxide is high, a plant may need fewer stomata to gather enough of it. When carbon dioxide is low, it may produce more stomata, so it can take in enough gas for photosynthesis. This relationship is not identical in every plant. Different species respond in different ways. But when scientists compare fossil leaves with their living relatives, stomata can give useful hints about ancient carbon dioxide. A fossil leaf, then, can hold two kinds of memory at once. Its shape can suggest warmth, rainfall, and season. Its stomata can suggest the air itself. This is why a leaf preserved in shale or volcanic ash is more than a pretty imprint. It is a climate document, not written in words, but in edges, veins, pores, and size. Some fossil leaves come from worlds that would feel familiar. Others come from Earths that were much warmer than today. Around 56 million years ago, during a time called the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, global temperatures rose sharply over a few thousand years. Fossil plants from that interval show shifts in vegetation as warmer conditions spread. In some regions, plant communities changed as species moved, disappeared, or appeared in new places. Leaves became witnesses to climate change long before humans measured temperature with instruments. They recorded it by surviving, shifting, growing, falling, and sometimes being buried in quiet sediment. It is calming to imagine one ancient leaf drifting onto the surface of a lake. Perhaps it came from a branch above still water. Perhaps insects had chewed small holes near its edge. Perhaps autumn had already softened its color. It sank slowly. Mud covered it. Layer after layer settled above it. Millions of years passed. Mountains rose, rivers changed course. Animals came and went. And still the outline remained. A small green surface became a record of air and weather from a vanished world. But leaves have never been only record keepers. They did not just respond to climate as the planet changed around them. Across deep time, in numbers too large to picture, leaves also help change the air, the carbon cycle, and the living conditions of Earth itself. A fossil leaf can remember an ancient climate, but living leaves also help make climate. They do this quietly, through the same process that lets a plant feed itself. Photosynthesis takes carbon dioxide out of the air. It uses water from the soil. It uses energy from sunlight. And inside the leaf, those ingredients are changed into sugar. To the plant, this is food and building material. To the atmosphere, it is a small removal of carbon dioxide. One leaf does not change the sky. But Earth has never had only one leaf. It has had wetlands thick with ferns, forests of conifers and flowering trees, grasslands spreading across continents, mangroves standing in salt water, rainforests layered from dark soil to bright canopy. and every green surface has taken part in the slow exchange between air and life. Carbon dioxide is important because it traps heat in the atmosphere. It is one of Earth's greenhouse gases. A greenhouse gas is a gas that lets sunlight in, but slows some heat from escaping back into space. Without greenhouse gases, Earth would be far colder. With too much of them, Earth becomes warmer. So when leaves take in carbon dioxide, they are not only feeding plants, they are touching one of the systems that help set the planet's temperature. The carbon does not vanish. It is moved. A plant takes carbon from carbon dioxide and builds it into sugars. Then those sugars can become wood, bark, roots, seeds, fruits, and leaves. A tree trunk is partly air made solid. That sounds strange, but it is true in a simple way. Much of the carbon in wood came from carbon dioxide pulled from the atmosphere. A large tree may stand for decades, centuries, or in rare cases, thousands of years, holding carbon in its tissues. A bristlecone pine in the mountains of the western United States can live for more than 4,000 years. A coast redwood in California can rise more than 100 meters tall, with a trunk that stores an enormous amount of carbon-rich wood. Even smaller plants take carbon from the air and build it into living tissue. But for carbon to be stored away for a very long time, something else has to happen. Plant material must be buried or protected from full decay. When leaves, wood, roots, and stems die, fungi, bacteria, insects, and other organisms usually break them down. As they do, much of the carbon returns to the air as carbon dioxide. This is part of the normal carbon cycle. Carbon moves from air to plant, from plant to soil or animal, and often back into air again. But in some places, especially wet swamps and bogs, decay is slow. Waterlogged ground can have very little oxygen. Without enough oxygen, many decomposers work more slowly. Dead plant material can pile up. Layer after layer can be buried. Over thousands, millions, and then tens of millions of years, that buried carbon can become peat, coal, or other carbon-rich deposits. This matters deeply. When plant carbon is buried, it is kept away from the atmosphere for long spans of time. That can lower carbon dioxide levels and influence climate. Leaves also release oxygen. During photosynthesis, water molecules are split. The plant uses part of that process to make sugar, and oxygen is released as a leftover. Again, leaves were not the first life to do this. Cyanobacteria in ancient water began releasing oxygen billions of years before forests existed. But land plants added a new and powerful source. As plants spread across continents, oxygen production increased across enormous green landscapes. During the Carboniferous period, from about 359 to 299 million years ago, Earth held vast swamp forests. Oxygen levels may have risen much higher than today, possibly above 30%, compared with about 21% in the modern atmosphere. That richer oxygen world helps support giant insects, including dragonfly-like relatives such as Meganeura, with wingspans that may have reached around 70 centimeters. The air itself was different. The balance of gases had shifted, and plants were part of that shift. It is peaceful to picture a leaf opening in morning light, But behind that calm image is planetary chemistry. Carbon dioxide enters, oxygen leaves, water rises, sugar forms. Some carbon returns quickly, some is held in wood, some sinks into soil, some is buried for ages. Across deep time, leaves help turn sunlight into matter, matter into forests, and forests into changes in the air. Their power became even greater when they gathered not as single surfaces, but as countless green layers spread across ancient swamps, where fallen plant bodies sank into dark water and began a much longer story beneath the ground. The buried story beneath the ground begins in a world that would feel both green and unfamiliar. During the Carboniferous period, from about 359 to 299 million years ago, huge swamp forests spread across low, wet regions of Earth. Much of what is now North America and Europe sat closer to the equator. Warm seas rose and fell over broad coastal plains. Rivers wandered through flat land. Mud gathered in deep basins, and plants grew in thick, humid forests where water covered the ground for long stretches of time. These were not forests of oaks, maples, beeches, or pines. Flowering trees had not yet appeared. There were no apples, cherries, magnolias, or grasses. Instead, the Carboniferous forests were filled with giant relatives of plants that seem small today. Some of the most striking were giant club mosses. Modern club mosses are usually low green plants that creep across forest floors. But their ancient relatives, such as lepidodendron, could grow more than 30 meters tall. Their trunks were marked with diamond-shaped leaf scars, left behind where long, narrow leaves had once attached. To stand near one would not feel like standing near a modern tree. It would feel like seeing a small ground plant enlarged into a tower. There were also giant horsetails. Modern horsetails, sometimes called equisetum, grow as jointed green stems along streams, ditches, and damp ground. Their ancient relatives included calamites, which could grow as tall as a small tree. They had ribbed stems, hollow centers, and branches arranged in rings. In the wet air of those forests, they rose from muddy ground like green columns. Ferns were common too. Some were tree ferns with tall trunks and crowns of divided fronds. Others were seed ferns, plants that had fern-like leaves but reproduced with seeds instead of spores. A spore is a tiny reproductive cell, light enough to travel by air or water. A seed is larger and contains a young plant with stored food and protection. This difference would become important later in plant history. But in the Carboniferous swamps, both kinds of reproduction shared the same wet world. The air itself may have been different. Oxygen levels were likely higher than they are today. Modern air is about 21% oxygen. During parts of the Carboniferous, oxygen may have climbed above 30%. That high oxygen level may have helped support giant arthropods, including Meganeura, a dragonfly-like insect relative with a wingspan that may have reached around 70 centimeters. On the swamp floor, enormous millipede relatives such as Arthropleura may have grown more than 2 meters long. These animals move through a plant world thick with stems, roots, fallen leaves, and damp decay. The swamps were important because of what did not fully happen there. Dead plants did not always decay completely. In an ordinary forest, fallen leaves and wood are broken down by fungi, bacteria, insects, and other small life. Carbon returns to the air and soil. But in waterlogged carboniferous swamps, the ground often had very little oxygen. When plant materials sank into dark mud and standing water, decay slowed. Layer after layer of dead stems, roots, spores, leaves, and woody tissues built up. Over time, this material became peat. Peat is partly decayed plant matter that forms in wet places where breakdown is slow. If peat is buried deeply enough, pressure and heat can slowly change it. Water and gases are squeezed away. Carbon becomes more concentrated. Across millions of years, peat can become coal. Many coal beds mined today began as ancient swamp plant matter. A black piece of coal may contain the remains of forests that grew more than 300 million years ago. It may hold carbon once pulled from the air by leaves and stems in bright, wet sunlight. That is the strange afterlife of those ancient forests. Their green surfaces fed themselves with light. Their fallen bodies sank into swamps. Their carbon stayed buried long after the plants disappeared. The forests vanished. The continents moved. Mountains rose and wore down. New kinds of plants evolved. Animals changed. And still, much of that buried plant matter remained beneath the ground. A fallen leaf can seem temporary. It browns, curls, softens, and disappears into soil. But the Carboniferous world shows that dead plant matter is not always the end of a small life. Under the right conditions, it can become part of Earth's deep storage. It can hold sunlight from an ancient sky for hundreds of millions of years. And even in an ordinary forest today, every fallen leaf begins a quieter version of that same return, settling toward the ground where other living things are waiting. A fallen leaf does not really leave the forest. It only changes places. It slips from the branch to the ground. It rests on soil, moss, roots, stones, and older leaves. Its green fades to yellow, red, copper, or brown. Its soft surface curls as water leaves the cells. Its veins remain for a while, like a tiny skeleton holding the old shape together. And then, slowly, other forms of life begin to take it apart. A leaf that once gathered sunlight becomes food for the hidden world below. Fungi are often among the first to begin the work. A fungus does not eat the way an animal eats. It grows fine threads called hyphae through dead material. These threads are much thinner than a hair, and together they form a web called mycelium. The mycelium releases chemicals called enzymes. Enzymes help break large materials into smaller pieces that the fungus can absorb. In a fallen leaf, fungi can begin breaking down cellulose, the tough material that gives plant cell walls their structure. Some fungi can also break down lignin, the harder material found in wood and tougher leaf tissues. This is one reason old leaves soften, darken, and lose their shape. Bacteria join the work too. Bacteria are tiny single-celled organisms, far too small to see without a microscope. A handful of healthy forest soil can contain billions of them. Some bacteria feed on simple sugars and proteins left inside dead leaves. Others help release nutrients that plants will later use again. The fallen leaf becomes less like an object and more like a meeting place. Fungi spread through it. Bacteria coat it. Tiny mites graze on it. Springtails, which are small jumping soil animals, nibble at decaying pieces. Woodlice and millipedes chew larger fragments. Earthworms pull leaves into their burrows and grind them through their bodies with bits of soil. A nightcrawler can drag a leaf stem first into the ground, leaving only the edge visible at the surface. Bit by bit, the leaf becomes smaller. A whole autumn layer turns into broken pieces. The broken pieces become dark crumbs. The dark crumbs mix with soil. As this happens, important nutrients return to the ground. Leaves contain nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and many other elements in small amounts. Nitrogen helps plants build proteins and green chlorophyll. Phosphorus helps with energy transfer inside cells and supports roots and seeds. Potassium helps control water balance and many chemical processes inside the plant. When a leaf is alive, these nutrients are locked inside its tissues. When it falls and decays, decomposers release them back into the soil. Tree roots can take them up again. A beech leaf, an oak leaf, or a maple leaf may eventually help feed new spring growth on the same forest floor where it fell. This is why leaf litter matters. Leaf litter is the layer of fallen leaves, twigs, bark pieces, and other plant material resting on the ground. It may look messy in a garden, but in a forest, it is protection. A blanket of leaves slows the drying of soil by shading it from direct sun and moving air. It softens the impact of raindrops, so soil is not easily washed away. On a slope, leaves can reduce erosion by holding the surface in place while roots and fungi bind the ground below. In winter, leaf litter acts like insulation. It helps protect small roots, seeds, insects, salamanders, and overwintering pupae from sudden temperature swings. A forest floor covered in leaves does not heat and cool as sharply as bare soil. Under that layer, moisture stays longer. The ground remains more stable. Small life can continue working in the dark. In autumn, a single deciduous tree can drop thousands of leaves. A mature oak may release many tens of thousands in one season. Across an entire forest, the number becomes too large to picture. But each leaf enters the same slow process. Fall, soften, break, feed, return. The leaf that once opened its stomata to the air now opens itself to the soil. Its work is no longer photosynthesis. Its work is giving back. And when enough fallen leaves gather over years, they do more than disappear. They help build the dark living layer beneath the trees, a quiet engine where old sunlight is turned into future growth. The dark layer beneath a forest is not just dirt. It is a slow mixture of stone, water, air, roots, fungi, bacteria, and old life. Much of it begins with what falls from above. Leaves drift down year after year. Oak leaves, beech leaves, maple leaves, birch leaves, poplar leaves. Needles fall too, from pine, spruce, fir, cedar, and hemlock. Each one adds a small piece to the surface of the ground. At first, the fallen layer is easy to recognize. You can still see the pointed lobes of a red oak leaf. You can still see the smooth oval shape of a beech leaf. You can still see the pale underside of a maple leaf curled beside a root. But with rain, frost, fungi, insects, and time, those shapes begin to fade. The leaf becomes fragments. The fragments become dark crumbs. The crumbs mix with mineral soil below. Eventually, some of that material becomes humus. Humus is the dark, soft organic matter left after dead plants and animals have broken down deeply. It is not one single substance. It is a rich mixture of partly changed carbon compounds, tiny remains of living things, and materials made by microbes. It gives healthy forest soil its dark color and soft smell. If you have ever lifted a handful of soil from an old woodland and noticed that earthy scent after rain, you have sensed part of this hidden process. Humus helps soil hold water. It acts a little like a sponge, keeping moisture available instead of letting it drain away too quickly. This matters in summer heat, when tree roots need steady water. It also matters after rain, when soil with more organic matter can hold moisture more gently. Humus also helps soil hold nutrients. Tiny particles in organic matter can cling to important plant nutrients, such as calcium, potassium, and magnesium. That keeps them from washing away too fast. Roots can then draw on them slowly. In this way, old leaves help feed new leaves. The forest floor is arranged in layers, though they are not always perfectly neat. At the top is fresh litter, where the newest fallen leaves still show their shapes. Below that is a softer layer of partly decomposed material. Below that, dark organic matter mixes with mineral soil made from broken rock. Soil scientists often call the surface organic layer the O horizon. Horizon simply means a soil layer. In a quiet hardwood forest, this surface layer may be only a few centimeters thick. In wetter, colder places where decay is slower, organic layers can become much deeper. In northern bogs, plant matter may build into peat over thousands of years. In warm tropical forests, the pattern is different. Leaves fall constantly, but heat and moisture help decomposers work quickly. In parts of the Amazon rainforest, nutrients may move rapidly from fallen leaves into fungi, roots, and living plants. The soil itself can be surprisingly poor because the living forest holds so much of the nutrient supply. The leaves fall. They break down. The roots and fungi take the released nutrients back up. The cycle turns quickly, almost like breath. In a temperate forest, the rhythm is slower and more seasonal. Autumn drops a heavy layer of leaves all at once. Winter slows decay. Spring moisture wakes fungi and bacteria again. By summer, many of last year's leaves have softened into the ground. Earthworms can change this process too. In some North American forests, certain earthworms were not originally present after the last ice age, which ended around 11,700 years ago. European earthworms arrived later with soil, plants, and human movement. Where they are common, they can pull leaf litter down quickly, changing the thickness of the forest floor and affecting small plants that depend on that soft leaf layer. Even something as quiet as a worm moving leaves can reshape a woodland over time. The forest floor is a recycling system, but not a cold mechanical one. It is slow, damp, living, and full of small exchanges. Old sunlight, once held in green tissue, becomes sugar. Sugar becomes leaf. Leaf becomes litter. Litter becomes humus. Humus feeds roots. Roots send water upward, and new leaves open again to the light. Nothing is wasted quickly. Nothing truly disappears. The ground beneath the trees is partly made from the trees themselves. And once that is clear, the forest no longer feels like trunks rising from soil alone. It feels like a living circle, with the roof above feeding the floor below, and the floor below quietly preparing the next roof of leaves. The floor below prepares the roof above. Roots take in water. Fungi trade nutrients. Old leaves become dark soil. And from that hidden work, trunks rise upward, branches divide, and new leaves spread into the air. A forest canopy is the leafy roof of a forest. It is the layer where branches and leaves meet sunlight most directly. In a young woodland, the canopy may be only a few meters high. In an old eastern hemlock forest, it may rise 20 or 30 meters above the ground. In tropical rainforests, canopy trees commonly reach 30 to 50 meters. Some emergent trees grow even higher, standing above the main roof, like quiet green towers. A canopy changes the world beneath it. It blocks part of the sunlight. It softens wind. It catches rain before it reaches the soil. It creates shade that can make the ground cooler than an open field, only a short distance away. On a hot summer day, the air under trees can feel noticeably gentler because leaves absorb sunlight, cast shade, and release water vapor. That water vapor comes from transpiration, the same process where leaves lose water through stomata. As water evaporates from leaf surfaces, it helps cool the surrounding air. A forest is not only shaded, it is breathing moisture upward. Rain also moves differently through a canopy. Some drops strike leaves and drip slowly from tips and edges. Some run down branches and trunks. Some evaporate before they ever touch the ground. This means the canopy slows rain, spreads it out, and reduces the force of water hitting soil below. A bare slope can be cut by heavy rain. A forested slope is softened by leaves, roots, litter, and trunks working together. The canopy is shelter for the ground, but it is also a world of its own. In tropical rainforests, many organisms spend most of their lives high above the forest floor. Sloths hang among leaves in Central and South American forests, moving slowly through branches and feeding on foliage. Howler monkeys rest and call from the canopy, their voices carrying through the trees. Toucans, parrots, tree frogs, ants, beetles, moths, spiders, and countless other small animals live among leaves, bark, flowers, and fruit. Some may rarely touch the ground. To them, the canopy is not a roof. It is home. Leaves help divide this home into layers. The highest leaves receive bright light and strong wind. Lower leaves live in dimmer, stiller air. Branches hold mosses, lichens, and epiphytes. An epiphyte is a plant that grows on another plant without taking food from it. Many orchids and bromeliads are epiphytes. They perch on branches where they can reach light and catch rainwater. Some bromeliads form small cups with their leaves. Those cups can hold water high in the trees. In that trapped water, tiny animals may live, including mosquito larvae, small insects, and even tadpoles in some rainforest species. A leaf can become part of a small hanging pond. Lichens also live on bark and branches. A lichen is a partnership, usually between a fungus and an alga or cyanobacterium. The fungus provides structure. The photosynthetic partner makes food from light. Together, they form pale green, grey, orange, or yellow patches on tree bark. Mosses hold moisture like soft sponges. They create tiny damp habitats where springtails, mites, and microscopic animals can move through hidden spaces. Even dead leaves caught in branch forks matter. They collect dust, spores, insect parts, and bits of bark. Over time, this material can form small pockets of soil high above the ground. Roots of canopy plants may grow into those pockets. Life builds little islands in the air. The canopy also shapes sound and movement. Leaves rustle, absorb, and scatter noise. Birds use branches as pathways. Insects lay eggs on leaf undersides. Caterpillars chew soft edges. Spiders stretch silk between twigs. Squirrels and monkeys use overlapping crowns like roads. The forest becomes vertical, not just a flat world across the ground, but a layered one from soil to shadow to sun. And through all of it, leaves organize the space. They decide where light falls. They decide where moisture lingers. They decide where animals can hide, feed, nest, climb, and wait. The canopy may look like the top of the forest from below, but it is also one of the main systems that makes the forest work. It shelters the soil. It cools the air. It feeds animals. It catches rain. It builds habitats above the ground. And because so many lives gather around leaves, the green roof is never just above the ecosystem. It is woven through it, giving shape to the lives that move, rest, feed, and grow beneath its shade. Because so many lives gather around leaves, the canopy is never empty. It is feeding something almost all the time. A caterpillar rests along the edge of an oak leaf, leaving a neat curve where it has chewed. A beetle scrapes the soft green tissue between veins. A deer reaches up for tender maple, willow, or aspen leaves at the edge of a clearing. A koala sits in a eucalyptus tree in eastern Australia, slowly eating leaves that most animals cannot tolerate. A sloth hangs from branches in Central or South America, feeding on leaves so low in energy that its whole life moves at a careful, slow pace. All of these animals are receiving sunlight secondhand. They cannot take light from the sky and turn it directly into food. Their bodies do not have chloroplasts, the tiny green structures that plants use for photosynthesis. So they depend on plants to do that first quiet step. The leaf catches sunlight. The leaf builds sugar. The sugar helps build plant tissue. Then an animal eats the tissue, and the energy begins moving through the food web. A food web is the set of feeding connections in an ecosystem. It is more tangled than a simple chain. A caterpillar may eat a leaf. A chickadee may feed the caterpillar to its young. A hawk may hunt the chickadee. Fungi and bacteria may later break down the remains of all of them. But somewhere near the beginning, there is often a leaf, a grass blade, an algae cell, or some other green surface turning light into living matter. Leaves are one of the main ways sunlight becomes animal life. Caterpillars show this clearly. The larva of a butterfly or moth is mostly a feeding stage. It hatches from an egg and begins eating plant tissue, often from a very specific host plant. A monarch caterpillar feeds on milkweed leaves. A swallowtail caterpillar may feed on parsley, dill, carrot, or citrus leaves, depending on the species. A single caterpillar can eat many times its own body weight before it forms a chrysalis or cocoon. Its soft body is built from leaves changed into muscle, skin, silk, and stored energy. Beetles also live deeply in the world of leaves. Some chew from the outside. Some skeletonize leaves, eating the soft tissue while leaving the veins behind. Others, called leaf miners, live inside the leaf itself, feeding between the upper and lower surfaces. Their tunnels can look like pale, winding trails across the green. Even a small leaf may become a whole landscape to an insect. For larger animals, leaves can be harder food. They contain cellulose, the tough material that gives plant cell walls their strength. Humans cannot digest cellulose well. That is why lettuce, spinach, and cabbage provide fiber, but not the kind of rich energy we get from starch or fat. Many grazing and browsing animals rely on microbes to help. Cattle, sheep, goats, deer, and giraffes have special digestive systems where bacteria and other tiny organisms break down plant material. A cow's rumen, the first large chamber of its stomach, acts like a warm fermentation tank. Inside it, microbes help unlock energy from grass and leaves. Without those microbes, much of that green food would pass through unused. Koalas show another version of this partnership. Eucalyptus leaves are tough, low in nutrients, and filled with strong chemical compounds. Koalas eat them anyway, using a specialized gut and helpful microbes to process the leaves slowly. Because the food is not rich, koalas conserve energy by resting for long hours. The leaf shapes the animal's daily rhythm. Sloths are similar in a different forest. Their leafy diet is low in calories, so they move slowly, digest slowly, and spend much of their lives hanging in trees. The quiet pace of the animal is linked to the quiet chemistry of the leaf. Even livestock, which humans have depended on for thousands of years, are part of this same story. Cattle turn grass leaves into milk, meat, leather, manure, and movement. Goats browse leaves from shrubs. Sheep graze blades close to the ground. Through them, plant tissue enters human history as food, clothing, farming, and trade. A leaf may seem small, but to the lives around it, it is a meal, a shelter, a nursery, and a source of energy. It is the first soft step between sunlight and hunger. And because leaves are so valuable, plants could not leave them unguarded. A surface that feeds so many mouths had to learn how to protect itself. A surface that feeds so many mouths cannot stay completely helpless. A leaf may look soft. It may tremble in a breeze, fold under rain, or tear easily between fingers. But inside its cells, along its surface, and even in the air around it, a leaf can carry many quiet defenses. Some defenses are physical. Oak leaves contain tough fibers and bitter compounds called tannins. Tannins can make leaves harder to digest and less pleasant to eat. Holly leaves have stiff, sharp points along their edges. Many grasses contain silica, the same mineral found in sand and glass, which can make their blades rough and wearing on insect jaws and grazing teeth. Some leaves are covered in wax. A waxy surface can slow water loss, but it can also make the leaf harder for insects to grip, pierce, or chew. Cabbage leaves, eucalyptus leaves, and many desert leaves carry this smooth protective coating. Other leaves use hairs. Plant hairs are called trichomes. Some are soft and fuzzy, like the hairs on lamb's ear leaves. Others are stiff, sticky, sharp, or irritating. The stinging nettle is a famous example. Its leaves and stems carry tiny hollow hairs that can inject irritating chemicals into skin when touched. The plant does not move toward an animal. It simply waits, covered in tiny glass-like needles. Some defenses are chemical. Milkweed leaves contain compounds called cardinalides, which can affect the hearts of many animals if eaten in large amounts. Monarch caterpillars are able to feed on milkweed, and they even store some of those chemicals in their bodies, making themselves unpleasant to many predators. Tobacco leaves produce nicotine. To humans, nicotine is known because of tobacco use, but for the plant, it is a natural insect defense. Caffeine, found in tea leaves and coffee plants, can also affect insects and other small animals. The same plant chemicals that humans turned into drinks, medicines, spices, and stimulants often began as ways for plants to protect their tissues. A leaf is not trying to be useful to us. It is trying to survive long enough to feed the plant. Some leaves change after they are attacked. When a caterpillar bites into a leaf, it does not only remove tissue, it leaves behind damage, saliva, and chemical traces. The plant can detect some of these signs. In tomatoes, corn, beans, and many other plants, injury can trigger a signal system involving a plant hormone called jasmonic acid. A hormone is a chemical messenger. In plants, jasmonic acid helps turn on defense responses after chewing damage. The leaf may begin making proteins that slow insect digestion. It may raise levels of bitter or toxic compounds. It may strengthen nearby tissues. The response is not instant like an animal pulling away from pain. Plants have no nerves like ours, but they do have signals. They can sense damage and change what their cells are making. The defense can also move beyond one leaf. A damaged leaf may send chemical messages through the plant's tissues. Nearby leaves may begin preparing before they are bitten. Some plants release smells into the air when insects feed on them. These smells are called volatile organic compounds. Volatile means they can easily drift through the air. Organic means they contain carbon and are made by living chemistry. To us, some may smell green, sharp, sweet, or grassy. To insects, they can carry information. A corn plant being eaten by caterpillars can release airborne chemicals that attract tiny parasitic wasps. Those wasps may lay eggs in or near the caterpillars, reducing the number of leaf eaters on the plant. Lima bean plants can release signals that attract predatory mites when spider mites begin feeding on them. Some trees, herbs, and crop plants use similar chemical calls. The leaf is not shouting. It is changing the air by tiny amounts. But in the insect world, tiny amounts can matter. A beetle, a caterpillar, a wasp, or a mite may read that chemical trace as clearly as a footprint in soft mud. So the leaf is food, but not only food. It is a guarded place. It may be bitter. It may be waxed. It may be hairy. It may be tough with fibers or minerals. It may change its chemistry after the first bite. It may warn other leaves. It may call for help from the enemies of its enemies. The stillness of a leaf is not emptiness. It is a patient form of defense, shaped by countless generations of animals trying to eat plants, and plants finding quiet ways to remain green. Plants found quiet ways to remain green, but insects found quiet ways to keep eating. This old struggle is written on leaves almost everywhere. A round hole in a rose leaf, a ragged edge on a cabbage leaf, a pale tunnel winding across a birch leaf, a curled oak leaf tied with silk. Each mark is a small record of an animal solving the problem of plant defense. Insects are among the most successful animals on Earth. There are more described insect species than any other group of animals. Many of them depend on plants for food, and leaves are one of the great feeding places of the world. Some insects chew. Caterpillars have strong jaws called mandibles that cut leaf tissue from the edge inward. A hungry tomato hornworm can strip leaves from a tomato plant with surprising speed. The larvae of many moths and butterflies spend most of their early lives doing this simple work. Eat the leaf, grow larger, shed the old skin, eat again. Beetles chew too. Japanese beetles often skeletonize leaves, eating the softer tissue while leaving veins behind. The leaf can be left looking like lace, with the framework still visible. Grasshoppers cut through leaves with steady bites, leaving uneven edges along grasses, beans, corn, and wild plants. Other insects pierce instead of chew. Aphids use thin mouthparts called stylets. A stylet is like a tiny needle. It slips into plant tissue and can reach the phloem, the sugar-carrying sap inside the plant. The aphid drinks this sweet liquid while sitting almost still on a stem or leaf underside. Scale insects, leafhoppers, cicadas, and whiteflies use similar piercing methods. They do not need to remove a large piece of leaf. They tap into the plant's inner flow. Some insects hide inside the leaf itself. These are leaf miners. A leaf miner is usually the larva of a moth, fly, beetle, or sawfly. It lives between the upper and lower surfaces of the leaf, feeding on the soft tissue in the middle. That inner tissue is called mesophyll. It is where much of photosynthesis happens. As the larva eats, it leaves a pale trail behind. On a leaf of birch, aspen, citrus, spinach, or columbine, the trail may look like a thin white river twisting across the green. The insect is protected inside the leaf, with a roof above it and a floor below it. To a person, the trail is a small mark. To the larva, it was a whole hidden passageway. Other insects roll or fold leaves. Some caterpillars pull leaf edges together with silk, making a shelter where they can feed more safely. Leaf roller moth larvae do this on oaks, apples, grapes, and many other plants. The rolled leaf becomes a small room. Inside, the insect is harder for birds, wasps, and other predators to reach. Some insects make galls. A gall is an unusual swelling or growth formed by the plant. often after an insect or mite changes the way the plant's cells grow. Oak trees can carry round galls made by tiny wasps. Goldenrod stems can form ball-like galls where fly larvae live. The plant tissue becomes both shelter and food. It is a strange kind of control, where the insect does not simply eat the plant, but changes its shape. Plants answered these pressures with thicker leaves, tougher veins, sticky sap, bitter chemicals, hairs, spines, and fast chemical signals. Insects answered with sharper mouthparts, detoxifying enzymes, protective shelters, timing, camouflage, and special diets. A monarch caterpillar feeds on milkweed despite the plant's chemical defenses. A cabbage white caterpillar can feed on mustard family plants that contain sharp-tasting defensive compounds. Some insects rely on microbes in their gut to help break down difficult plant materials. Others specialize so deeply that they can live on only a few kinds of leaves. This back and forth has gone on for hundreds of millions of years. Fossil leaves from ancient forests show feeding marks, mines, holes, and galls. By the time flowering plants spread widely during the Cretaceous period, many insects were already closely tied to plant life. The struggle did not stop leaves from spreading. It helped shape them. Every bite created pressure. Every defense created a new challenge. Every insect adaptation opened another path. Out of this long, quiet contest came more forms, more signals, more shapes, more partnerships, and more complexity. And while insects kept chewing, piercing, mining, and folding, plants continued to build new ways of growing, blooming, and spreading their seeds through a changing world. Plants continued to build new ways of growing, new ways of feeding, new ways of defending themselves, new ways of spreading across the land. And in the age of dinosaurs, one group began to change the green world in a lasting way. These were the flowering plants. Their scientific name is angiosperms. An angiosperm is a plant that makes flowers and produces seeds enclosed inside fruits. A peach tree is an angiosperm. So is a sunflower. So are grasses, orchids, roses, oaks, maples, tomatoes, apples, wheat, rice, and nearly every plant we depend on for food. Flowering plants appeared at least 140 million years ago, and possibly earlier. By the Cretaceous period, while dinosaurs still walked across floodplains, forests, and warm coastal lands, flowering plants were spreading and diversifying. They did not replace every older plant. Ferns, conifers, cycads, mosses, and other groups remained. But flowering plants became unusually good at growing quickly, reproducing efficiently, and entering new habitats. Their leaves were part of that success. Many flowering plants developed leaf networks with dense branching veins. These vein networks could move water through the leaf efficiently. They also help support high rates of photosynthesis. When a leaf can move enough water and gather enough carbon dioxide, it can make sugars quickly. Those sugars can build new stems, roots, flowers, fruits, and seeds. In many flowering plants, growth can be fast compared with older plant groups. A sunflower can grow from seed to a tall flowering plant in one season. A bean seed can sprout, unfold leaves, climb, bloom, and make pods within a few months. Wheat and rice, two grasses that now feed billions of people, complete their life cycles in a single growing season. This speed matters. A plant that grows quickly can take advantage of open ground after fire, flood, storm, grazing, or disturbance. It can flower, set seed, and spread before slower plants fully take over. Leaves made the sugar that powered that speed. Flowers added another advantage. Before flowers, many plants relied on wind to move pollen. Pollen is the fine powder that carries male reproductive cells from one plant part to another. Wind can work well, especially for conifers and grasses, but it is not precise. A plant may release huge amounts of pollen, and only a little reaches the right place. Flowers changed that relationship. They offered color, scent, shape, nectar, and pollen as signals and rewards. Insects, birds, bats, and other animals began carrying pollen from flower to flower. A bee visiting a blossom for nectar may brush against pollen and carry it to the next flower. A hummingbird feeding from a red tubular flower may do the same. A moth visiting a pale night-blooming flower may carry pollen in the dark. This made reproduction more targeted. The flower became a meeting place between plant and animal, and behind the flower, the leaves kept feeding the plant. After pollination, many flowering plants make fruits. A fruit is a mature structure that holds seeds. It can be sweet like a mango, dry like a pea pod, winged like a maple samara, fleshy like a berry, hard like a nut. Fruits help seeds travel. A bird eats a berry and drops the seeds elsewhere. A squirrel carries an acorn and forgets it underground. A fox eats wild fruit and spreads seeds across a field edge. A burr clings to fur. A dandelion seed rides the wind under a tiny parachute. Leaves power this too. The sugar in fruit began as light caught by leaves. The wood supporting the branch began as carbon gathered by leaves. The seed-stored food began with photosynthesis. So flowering plants linked leaves, flowers, fruits, animals, and movement into one powerful system. Modern food webs depend on this system deeply. Caterpillars feed on oak, willow, milkweed, cherry, and countless other flowering plants. Bees gather nectar and pollen from blossoms. Fruit bats, parrots, deer, bears, monkeys, ants, beetles, and humans all feed on parts of flowering plants. Grass leaves feed cattle, sheep, horses, bison, zebras, and antelope. Tiny grass flowers become grains. Rice, corn, wheat, oats, barley, and millet are all flowering plants. A meadow, a farm field, an orchard, a rainforest, and a backyard garden are all filled with this inheritance. By the time humans appeared, the world was already shaped by flowering plants. There were edible leaves, fruits, seeds, roots, herbs, shade trees, forests, grasses, medicines, poisons, and seasonal changes in green. Humans did not enter an empty landscape. They entered a world where leaves had already spent millions of years turning light into food, shelter, scent, color, and possibility. Humans entered a world already green with meaning. Long before farms, cities, books, or written recipes, people had to learn the plants around them by watching closely. A leaf could be food. A leaf could be medicine. A leaf could be poison. A leaf could wrap a meal, flavor water, shade a resting place, or warn that a season was changing. This knowledge was not learned all at once. It gathered slowly through thousands of years of careful attention. A person could notice that one plant soothed the sting when crushed against skin. Another caused a rash. Another made a bitter tea. Another could be eaten only when young, before its leaves became tough or sharp tasting. Leaves became signs that people had to read. The leaf of a stinging nettle, with its pointed edge and tiny irritating hairs, taught caution. The broad leaves of plantain, a common low-growing herb found in many parts of the world, were crushed and used in folk remedies for minor skin irritation. Mint leaves, with their cool scent, were brewed into teas and added to food. Bay leaves from the laurel tree were dried and used to flavor soups and stews. Tea leaves from Camellia sinensis were brewed in China for centuries before tea became one of the most traded drinks in the world. Human life became linked to leaves through taste, smell, comfort, and memory. Some leaves were eaten directly. Lettuce, spinach, cabbage, kale, mustard greens, grape leaves, and many wild greens became part of human diets. But people also had to learn which leaves not to eat. Rhubarb stems are used in pies and preserves, but the leaves contain high levels of oxalic acid and other compounds that can be harmful. Poison ivy leaves can cause an itchy rash because of an oily compound called urushiol. Foxglove leaves contain powerful chemicals that affect the heart. In careful medical doses, related compounds became important in heart medicine. But the plant itself can be dangerous. A leaf could help or harm depending on the plant, the amount, and the way it was used. That made observation essential. Leaves also help people identify place. A palm leaf meant something different from a spruce needle. An olive leaf belonged to dry Mediterranean hillsides. A banana leaf belonged to warm regions where broad green blades could grow large in humid air. A maple leaf in eastern North America marked forests that changed color in autumn. People learned the shape, smell, texture, and timing of local leaves because those details mattered. They could show where water was nearby. They could show where certain animals might feed. They could show which plants returned after fire, flood, or winter. Leaves also became calendars. In temperate regions, the first small leaves of spring showed that cold was loosening its hold. The full green canopy of summer meant shade, growth, insects, and fruit still forming. Autumn colors marked the shortening of days. In many deciduous trees, leaves change color because chlorophyll breaks down. The green fades, and other pigments become visible. Carotenoids create yellows and oranges. Anthocyanins can create reds and purples in leaves, such as some maples. To modern science, this is chemistry. To early people, it was also timing. A forest turning gold or red could signal harvest, migration, preparation, or colder nights ahead. Names grew from this kind of attention. Many plant names describe how leaves look, smell, feel, or behave. Lamb's ear has soft, fuzzy leaves. Silver sage has pale, silvery leaves. Peppermint tells of a sharp, cooling taste. Willow leaves, narrow and bending, became tied to wet ground and riverbanks. In many cultures, plant names carried instructions. They helped people remember what to gather, what to avoid, what to brew, and what to leave alone. This kind of knowledge is sometimes called ethnobotany. Ethnobotany means the study of how people use and understand plants. But long before it had a name, it lived in daily practice. Parents taught children. Healers taught apprentices. Cooks learned from older hands. Travelers carried seeds, cuttings, dried herbs, and stories. A leaf was never only a leaf. It was a clue to food, season, safety, place, and care. And from that slow reading of green surfaces came larger human habits. Gardens, medicines, meals, trade routes, sacred plants, field crops, stored herbs. Leaves moved from wild paths into homes, markets, temples, farms, and kitchens, carrying the old language of the living world with them. Leaves moved with people. They crossed mountains, oceans, deserts, kitchens, temples, markets, and gardens. Some were carried fresh. Some were dried. Some were crushed into powders. Some were wrapped around food, burned in ceremony, brewed in water, pressed onto paper, or woven into roofs. Tea leaves became one of the most important leaves in human history. The tea plant, Camellia sinensis, first grew wild in parts of East and Southeast Asia. By around the first millennium, tea was deeply established in China as a drink, a medicine, and a daily ritual. The same plant can become green tea, black tea, white tea, oolong tea, or pu'er tea, depending on how the leaves are picked, dried, heated, rolled, and allowed to oxidize. Oxidize means the leaf changes through contact with oxygen in the air, a process that darkens the leaf and changes its flavor. A small dried tea leaf can carry caffeine, bitter tannins, floral scents, grassy notes, smoke, earth, or sweetness. It can cross the world in a wooden chest, then open again in hot water. Bay leaves shaped food in a quieter way. The bay laurel tree, Laurus nobilis, grew around the Mediterranean. Its stiff evergreen leaves were dried and added to soups, stews, beans, sauces, and braised meats. A single bay leaf can flavor an entire pot, not by making the food taste leafy, but by adding a soft background note that is hard to name. The same tree also carried deep symbolic meaning. In ancient Greece and Rome, laurel wreaths were placed on winners, poets, leaders, and athletes. To be crowned with laurel was to be marked with honor. The leaf became a sign of victory. Herbs brought leaves into daily cooking and healing. Basil leaves became central to pesto in Italy, and holy basil, or tulsi, became sacred in Hindu traditions. Mint leaves were brewed, chewed, and used to freshen rooms. Sage leaves were used in cooking, folk medicine, and spiritual practices. Parsley, cilantro, dill, oregano, rosemary, thyme, and many others helped people turn simple food into meals with memory. A soup with bay, a potato dish with dill, a tomato sauce with oregano, a cup of mint tea after eating. Each one shows how leaves became part of human comfort. Tobacco leaves changed history in a more complicated way. Tobacco plants were cultivated by indigenous peoples in the Americas long before Europeans arrived. The leaves were used in ceremony, trade, and social life. After the 1500s, tobacco spread across Europe, Africa, and Asia through colonization and global trade. its dried leaves became valuable, addictive, and deeply tied to plantation economies. This is a reminder that leaves have not only shaped gentle rituals, they have also shaped power, labor, money, and harm. Other leaves became tools. Banana leaves have been used across tropical regions to wrap, cook, serve, and carry food. In South India, meals are still often served on banana leaves, their broad surfaces holding rice, curries, pickles, and sweets. In parts of Latin America and Southeast Asia, banana leaves wrap tamales, rice cakes, fish, and steamed dishes. The leaf protects the food, adds a mild scent, and returns easily to the soil after use. Palm leaves became roofs, baskets, mats, fans, fences, and written surfaces. In South and Southeast Asia, palm leaf manuscripts preserved religious texts, poetry, law, medicine, and astronomy for centuries. Scribes cut and dried palm leaves, smoothed them, wrote on them with a stylus, and tied them together with cord. Before paper was common in many regions, a leaf could hold a whole library. Leaves also became signs people could recognize instantly. The olive branch became a symbol of peace around the Mediterranean, and later across much of the world. Palm fronds became symbols of victory, welcome, and religious ritual. The maple leaf became a national symbol of Canada, appearing on the flag adopted in 1965. A leaf can stand for a country, a prayer, a season, a meal, a medicine, a memory, or a promise. And yet, beneath all of this human meaning, leaves remain living structures first. They are not only symbols we have borrowed, they are still catching light, releasing water vapor, feeding animals, cooling streets, building soil, and changing the air around us. Human history has wrapped itself around leaves, but the older work continues outside the window, in forests, fields, gardens, and roadside trees, where green surfaces still quietly help hold the world together. Outside the window, the older work continues. A row of street trees, a patch of grass, a maple beside a driveway, a forest rising beyond a field. Each leaf is small, but together leaves change the air around them. They cool the ground first through shade. When sunlight falls on bare pavement, soil, stone, or roof shingles, those surfaces can heat quickly. Dark asphalt can become far hotter than the air above it on a summer afternoon. A tree canopy interrupts that heat. Its leaves catch part of the sunlight before it reaches the ground. Under a large oak, plane tree, or maple, the shaded surface may stay much cooler than the open sidewalk only a few steps away. This is why standing beneath a tree can feel different from standing beside a wall. The leaf is not only blocking light, it is also moving water. Through transpiration, water travels from roots to leaves, then leaves the plant as invisible vapor through stomata. As that water evaporates, it takes heat with it. This is the same basic reason wet skin feels cooler when a breeze passes over it. Plants do not sweat the way animals do, but the cooling effect of evaporation still matters. A single mature tree can release many liters of water vapor on a warm day. In good conditions, some large trees can release hundreds of liters. The exact amount depends on species, soil moisture, air temperature, wind, humidity, and how many leaves the tree carries. A willow near water behaves differently from a pine on dry ground. A rainforest tree behaves differently from a small apple tree in a backyard. But the pattern is the same. Water rises. Leaves open their stomata. Vapor enters the air. Heat is softened. When many trees do this together, the effect becomes larger. A forest is not just a group of trunks. It is a broad breathing surface. In the Amazon rainforest, billions of leaves release water vapor into the air each day. Some of that moisture helps form clouds and rain. Trees take up water from soil, lift it through their bodies, and send part of it back into the atmosphere. Winds can then carry that moisture across long distances. This is one reason forests can influence rainfall beyond their own edges. The water does not stay in one place. It moves from soil to root, from root to leaf, from leaf to air, from air to cloud, and from cloud back to land. In this way, leaves help keep water cycling through landscapes. Forests also affect humidity. Walk from an open dry field into a shaded woodland, and the air may feel cooler and slightly damp. The ground is protected by litter. The wind is slowed by trunks and branches. Leaves release vapor above. Together, these details create a local climate, a small zone with its own temperature, moisture, and light. Even city trees can do this on a smaller scale. A street lined with leafy trees can feel more comfortable than a wide road with no shade. Parks, gardens, and urban forests help reduce heat in crowded places, where concrete and asphalt store warmth. Leaves also touch the climate through carbon. Carbon dioxide enters leaves during photosynthesis. The plant uses carbon from that gas to make sugars. Those sugars become stems, roots, bark, fruit, seeds, and more leaves. In a forest, carbon can be stored in trunks, branches, roots, dead wood, leaf litter, and soil. Some of it returns to the air when plants respire or decay. Respire means to use oxygen and release carbon dioxide during energy use. Plants respire too, even while they also photosynthesize in light. But some carbon remains stored for years, decades, centuries, or longer. Old forests can hold large amounts of carbon in living trees and in soil. Peatlands, where wet conditions slow decay, can store carbon for thousands of years. Mangrove forests, growing along tropical and subtropical coasts, store carbon in wood, roots, and waterlogged sediments. A mangrove leaf falls into salty mud. Roots hold the shoreline. Sediment gathers. Decay slows in low oxygen ground. The leaf becomes part of a coastal storehouse of carbon and life. So the climate work of leaves is not one single action. It is shade on the ground. It is water vapor in the air. It is carbon entering living tissue. It is soil held in place. It is rainfall supported by forests. It is cooler air beneath branches on a hot day. And yet, after all this widening, the image can become simple again. One leaf, held toward the light, with tiny pores opening and closing, is connected to forests, clouds, soil, animals, cities, and the long balance of the air. One leaf, held toward the light, is enough to return the whole journey to something simple. A thin green surface, a middle vein, smaller veins branching outward, a soft edge, a stem connecting it to the rest of the plant. It may be a maple leaf resting on a sidewalk, a blade of grass bending after rain, a pine needle holding through winter, a banana leaf broad enough to wrap a meal, a tea leaf dried, rolled, and waiting for hot water. Each one carries more history than it first appears to hold. A leaf catches light and uses it to make sugar. It takes in carbon dioxide through tiny pores called stomata. It releases oxygen back into the air. It pulls water upward from roots through xylem, then lets some of that water drift away as vapor. It feeds the plant that made it. It helps build roots, bark, flowers, fruits, seeds, and new leaves. And when animals eat it, the energy inside the leaf begins moving through the wider living world. A caterpillar becomes bird food. A deer becomes part of a forest movement. A cow turns grass into milk. A koala rests slowly in eucalyptus branches because its leaf diet is low in energy and hard to digest. A sloth hangs in the canopy, living at the pace its food allows. Leaves are the quiet first step between sunlight and hunger. They are also guarded surfaces. They carry bitter chemicals, waxes, hairs, fibers, toxins, sharp edges, and signals. A tomato leaf, a milkweed leaf, a tobacco leaf, or an oak leaf is not passive. When insects chew, some plants change their chemistry. Some release airborne compounds that nearby leaves or helpful insects can detect. The leaf does not move like an animal. It answers in plant language, through chemistry, timing, and slow adjustment. Leaves also keep records. Fossil leaves pressed into stone can show ancient shapes, veins, edges, and stomata. Smooth or toothed margins can help reveal old temperatures. Tiny pores can hint at carbon dioxide levels from vanished air. A leaf buried in lake mud 30 million years ago can still carry traces of the climate it grew in. And leaves have not only recorded climates, they have helped shape them. Across forests, grasslands, wetlands, and farms, leaves have drawn carbon dioxide from the air, released oxygen, cooled landscapes through shade, and sent water vapor upward into the sky. They have helped build soil. A fallen leaf feeds fungi, bacteria, worms, mites, springtails, beetles, and roots. It softens, darkens, breaks apart, and becomes part of humus, the rich organic matter that helps soil hold water and nutrients. Old leaves become the floor that feeds new leaves. The forest becomes a circle, with the roof above slowly returning to the ground below. Human life has also been shaped by leaves. Tea leaves filled cups and trade routes. Bay leaves flavored pots of soup. Banana leaves wrapped food. Palm leaves held writing. Laurel leaves crowned victors. Olive branches became signs of peace. Maple leaves became symbols of place and identity. Medicinal leaves, poisonous leaves, sacred leaves, and cooking herbs all entered human memory through hands, kitchens, gardens, ceremonies, and careful observation. So the leaf is not background scenery. It is one of life's working structures. It is sunlight made useful. It is air made breathable. It is water lifted through wood. It is food for insects and animals. It is shelter in the canopy. It is litter on the forest floor. It is memory pressed into fossils. It is chemistry, protection, history, climate, and culture, all carried in a shape that can rest quietly in the palm of a hand. And after all of that, the leaf can still remain gentle. It does not need to be loud to be powerful. It does not need to be rare to be strange. It can hang outside a window, tremble on a branch, float down onto a path, or lie unnoticed beside a root. The next time a leaf appears in view, it may feel a little older, a little more alive, a little more connected to the long story of Earth. Its green surface is small, but inside that surface, sunlight, air, water, soil, animals, and people meet, quietly, patiently, almost everywhere. The world is held, in part, by leaves.